Who are the most improved teams in the NFL entering 2024? NFL free agency truly never ends, but it's mostly over. And of course, the NFL draft has just finished. So it's time to give you my 10 most improved NFL teams this off season. The teams that I believe will skyrocket and rise in 2024 because truthfully, I believe they have improved on offense, defense. Their roster is just a lot more talented, a lot better. There's different scales to improvement, right? There are teams that sucked last year that will get a bit better, and they certainly can make this list. There are teams that made the playoffs that could make true contender leaps in 2024. And then there were middling teams that might actually make a jump to the playoffs. So there's different scale when it comes to improvement. But these are the 10 teams I felt best about when it came to, yeah, man, their roster is just way better. Or, yeah, man, I love the coaching that they added this offseason. So if that sounds good, Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to get in the comments and let me know your opinion about the most improved teams in football. And of course, subscribe. I cover all 32 NFL teams, unlike any other channel on YouTube. So if you want more NFL content about all 32 teams, subscribe to the BLV. Let's begin with the most improved team, in my opinion, in terms of, yeah, they were good last year, and actually surprisingly good last year. Almost no one picked them to make the playoffs. But thanks to an absolute home run quarterback pick in the draft, they made the playoffs. You know who I'm talking about. The Houston Texans. I think they can leap from divisional round of the playoffs to this team might actually win the Super Bowl. That's how I feel about the Houston Texans. I think they're that talented. I think they're that good on paper. And I think they have the key foundational pieces that they already had in place when it comes to CJ Stroud, DeMeco Ryans, the play caller, the edge rusher, the corner, that I feel they can make a truly deep run in the AFC this year and maybe even get to that big game, right? So when it comes to the Texans, where did they really truly improve? Well, I think already being one of the most explosive offenses in football in 2023, they got more explosive for 2024. Stephon Diggs was added to this receiving core. Like, let's not forget that Stephon Diggs has been a top 10 receiver in the NFL for the past 7 years or something like that. And now he might be a 1B in an offense. Forget about it. If you thought that Diggs was slipping last year, which I definitely did for the Bills, he's going to look better because he's not going to have double teams all the time because you got an equally dangerous, if not more dangerous, especially vertically, Nico Collins on the other side. Tank Dell, a guy that CJ Stroud had in his top 11 players, like his offense. For if he had an offense, any player in the NFL, he would have Tank Dell in his slot. So that speaks to what he feels about Tank Dell. And obviously they didn't add him, but he's coming back from injury. So that's kind of an add, right? Because they didn't have him at the end of last year. They have Stephon Diggs now, one of the best intermediate route runners in football, another separator, another guy that's going to do damage in this offense, especially with the free releases and the matchups that this offensive scheme can create. It's going to be dangerous. You add a running back with the pedigree and the clutch factor of Joe Mixon, a great player in terms of both on-field production, pass catching, rushing, touchdown, red zone production, and then short yardage ability, vision, all that stuff. Maybe not a home run hitter, but just a consistent force that can carry the ball 20 times a game and provide balance, real respect of the running game that I think teams are going to have to really game plan for. And then he's also great, as is Stephon Diggs, in terms of their experience of playing in big games, right? It wasn't that long ago that Mixon was in a Super Bowl. So they have that big game experience factor. Then they add two younger pieces like Cade Stover at tight end, who Stroud really wanted in the draft. He's going to be a backup to Dalton Schultz, potentially a future starter for this team. And then Blake Fisher as a swing tight end, or a swing tackle, I should say. What is a swing tight end, Mitch? I'm not sure. But a swing tackle, Blake Fisher out of Notre Dame, he's somebody that just high floor prospect. If Tunzel is out or Howard is out, he can play for either one of those spots and probably play pretty well. So that is just a really nice, savvy pickup that's going to keep this offensive line in form. With all the injuries that they had last year at the offensive line spots, that is a really savvy pickup by Nick Caserio. You look at the defensive side of the football where I felt they really got a lot better. I'm super excited for DeMeco Ryans to be coaching the talent that he has now. Yeah, they did lose a 12-sack guy to the Vikings, right? But they added a Minnesota Viking, Danielle Hunter, one of the game's best edge rushers in the entire league for the past few years. Beyond few years. I mean, almost near a decade. Danielle Hunter's been after it. 12 sacks, 10 sacks, 15 sacks, 17 sacks. This is the type of productivity he brings to the table. He's great against the run. He's just an absolute behemoth of an edge rusher. Then you've got Denico Autry, who's one of the most versatile chess piece defensive linemen in all of football for the past few years, had one of his most productive seasons just last year. He's going to do damage on the interior with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter on the edge. Forget about it, man. Denico Autry is going to be going off with one-on-one matchups with those guards in the NFL. And then, yes, they maybe got a little weaker on the inside with Malik Collins and Sheldon Rankins moving on to other teams like the Bengals and the Niners. But with Fatikazi from Jacksonville, Settle, and Edwards coming in, I think they'll have enough depth there, especially with Denico Autry moving inside on passing snaps, where they won't really miss a beat. So as long as they're able to keep up in their run defense, which Azeez Al-Shaair, that pickup from Tennessee, that's DeMeco's boy from San Francisco at linebacker. He's certainly going to help penetrate those gaps, fly sideline to sideline, make big tackles. He has no regard for his body. He is a really nice linebacker for this scheme. They also added a Jacob Phillips as well for some depth at linebacker and basically swapped, Blake Cashman out for those two players. At the cornerback position, they didn't exactly go for a big name, although there are still big names out there that they could really go out and address. If they wanted Stephon Gilmore, if they wanted a Xavier Howard, they could probably go out and get those guys because they're still available. If they want Justin Simmons at safety, maybe they still go out and get that guy. But I like that they took a volume approach to this position. Opposite Stingley, they're going to have their options, right? Okudah, a former top 3 pick in the NFL draft. Not my favorite guy, but certainly maybe has the pedigree, maybe if with a little bit of tweaking and coaching, and he has improved subtly throughout his career, maybe he could start at that opposite spot. Or maybe CJ Henderson, I believe from the same draft with all the talent in the world, the physical capabilities to be a good player. Can DeMeco, a really good defensive coach, get the most out of him in this system? That's intriguing to me. They also drafted a kid out of Georgia and Lassiter, who I kind of really believe is going to be a nickel player, but we'll see. You never really know. I like his savviness, his smarts, and talking about savviness and smarts, Miles Bryant, pickup from New England, is a really high floor nickel cornerback as well. So he can play definitely safety, nickel corner, really good tackler, really smart player. I think he fits Houston well because they play a lot of zone. And then Mike Ford was also added to the mix, as well at safety, Lonnie Johnson Jr. for depth, and Kalen Bullock, a rookie, with a lot of ball skills and a lot of high productivity as a deep free safety. Maybe something they were missing with Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie as more get the football box safeties. There's a lot that this Texans team added. A lot of the weaknesses, rather major or minor, they have tweaked, they have solved, they have improved. And I really view the Texans as an all-around contender. They have the talent at the key spots of wide receiver, quarterback, offensive line at key spots, defensive line for their pass rush, secondary in a couple spots, coaching. They have all of the indications of a contender, and that's why I just love what they did this offseason. I think they are arguably the most improved team, even though they were already a good team. The second improved team, and on the list of most improved teams, is the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears did major damage recently in the draft. Obviously, we knew they were going to take Caleb Williams, but it still counts. It's happened now. So we now understand that Caleb Williams is their quarterback of the future, and it's going to be interesting to see truly how good is he? How good is he right away? That's going to be the question for me, right? But you got Caleb Williams at quarterback, who's a playmaker, who can do damage inside or outside of the pocket, who I feel has the confidence, I think has the composure, I think has all the tools to be really good right away. But you never know, right? You never know. The wide receiver position drastically improved, both with a veteran and a rookie. Keenan Allen has been, you guys know it, one of the best receivers in football for a long time, is a demon in the slot, hard to cover, big chain mover, and although not one of the most explosive, for a rookie quarterback, extremely reliable, right? He's going to be there, especially against zone coverage. He's an answer. Rome Odunze, as a number 3, is ridiculous. The upside with this receiving core is outrageous, okay? Then you have the tight end position. People forget they actually added a Gerald Everett as a backup tight end to Cole Kmet. That's also another piece that you can throw in there with all the different diversity of the scheme. Now you could have 2 tight end formations, 3 receiver formations, 4 receiver formations, multi running back formations with all the running backs they have on their team. Like they added DeAndre Swift, a guy that can catch the football, great in the screen game, is an explosive element to an offense. I thought he had his best rushing season last year. He's not the most high floor player in terms of getting the most out of every run, but he's certainly capable of making a big play happen. The offensive line even improved. I thought that it was one of the more underrated units last year, and I actually think that Caleb Williams' presence of scrambling, mobility, and buying time is going to help them a lot in a way that Justin Fields didn't, because Justin Fields, I think he held on to the ball too long, took too many sacks, and he just doesn't have that slippery nature to his game. He's fast, he's athletic, he's big, but he's not slippery or elusive or as aware as Caleb Williams. So he's going to make the offensive line better in its own right. But Ryan Bates, Coleman Shelton, Matt Pryor, all added to the interior offensive line, all pieces that have started games, all pieces that I feel can help this offensive line. One of those guys is going to be a starter. And then they also added a left tackle in the 3rd round as a bit of depth and potential starter for the future as well. Defensively, I wish they would have done more with the defensive line, but they still did add a Jacob Martin and an Austin Booker, one from free agency in the draft. And then in the secondary, the big addition was Kevin Byard. And then they also added an Olympian's boyfriend in Jonathan Owens. So, Simone Biles' boyfriend, Jonathan Owens, a playmaker, a guy that I like. I think he's kind of underrated too. So they added 2 safeties to the back end, got rid of Eddie Jackson. Kevin Byard is like that Papa Bear I've been saying, a guy that's just been around the NFL, super savvy, super smart, super high IQ football player. I think he's going to be able to have this defense in the right looks at the right time, really sort out a young secondary and elevate everybody around him. And possibly that will make him a better player in 2024 than how he played in 2023, especially in Philadelphia. But the Chicago Bears are super improved. I think a lot of people are going to be hyping them up to the moon, but there's good reason for it. They've got a lot of talent with how their defense played last year at the end of the year. They definitely could be a team with an offense that could be explosive, could be a lot of fun to watch. They could truly make the playoffs. They could truly win a playoff game, just like Houston did last year. So the Chicago Bears are the 2nd most improved team, or the 2nd team on my most improved list. The next team that I feel really improved this offseason was the New York Jets. The New York Jets improved in key areas, and they really addressed this throughout free agency. The offensive line has been an absolute disaster for years now, and I felt like they finally, and I mean finally, addressed this position. Tyron Smith, left tackle. If you want to improve at left tackle, go and sign a Hall of Famer. That's what you do, right? Tyron Smith, it doesn't matter what offensive line, what system, what team, he's going to go in there and he's going to be good. That's just about one of the best signings you could possibly make. John Simpson, a little bit lower floor to him, obviously, but played well for Baltimore last year. I think he's going to be good in the running game for them at guard. Morgan Moses, a high floor veteran, doesn't get injured too much, knock on wood for that one, right? But, and then even if he does get hurt, you draft Olu in the 1st round, Fashanu, who out of Penn State, fantastic pass blocker, I feel is more of a left tackle, obviously, playing at Penn State, but maybe he can make that transition to right if there are issues on that side as well. But having a guy that can fill in at his talent level for Tyron Smith for the eventual 3 or 4 games that he misses this year, that's real nice work by the Jets there. Obviously, they get Aaron Rodgers back, which I'm not really counting here, but they also did add an important piece in Tyrod Taylor to back up Aaron Rodgers in case that he does miss a game or two, given his age, or you have to sit him for a game or two, right? Like maybe he has a slight issue with his hand or something, like something minor, or maybe he gets a head injury, right? Like you could put Tyrod Taylor in there for 2 weeks and not feel so bad with the defense that you have, right? You add Mike Williams, you add Malachi Corley in the draft, like 2 totally different receivers. One's a yak threat in Corley. One's a big jump ball guy and a high-end potential with Mike Williams with Aaron Rodgers, right? Like Mike Williams with Aaron Rodgers could be dangerous because Aaron Rodgers could put the ball wherever he wants it. Mike Williams can body someone up with his huge frame and huge size and an incredible wingspan. He doesn't have to separate to be a good receiver for Aaron Rodgers, right? And then you add Braylon Allen as a power back behind Breece Hall. Defensively, I don't love that they got rid of John Franklin Myers as he's been one of my personal favorites, but Javon Kinlaw is not a bad high upside, low cost option out of San Francisco. Hassan Reddick will be a big time baller for them on the edge this year. I think that's possibly an upgrade over Bryce Huff. And then you add Fotu for Jefferson as kind of a veteran swap there on the defensive tackle position. And then Isaiah Oliver as a veteran addition to the nickelback position as a 4th or 5th corner for depth. The Jets did a great job addressing multiple needs, a little bit of depth on the offensive line, a little bit of depth in the secondary defensive line, and finding ways to not only get better in key areas like receiver and offensive line where they had key desperate needs, especially right now because they want to win right now and they have a Super Bowl window right now, but they also found ways to kind of swap out players that were leaving, like Huff, for example, for other key veteran additions that fit their timeline, like a Hassan Reddick. So really nice work by the Jets to not only remain very good on defense, but also get a ton better in the areas that they needed to get a ton better offensively. Another New York team did a great job of improving this offseason, the New York G-Men. There's no doubt they have gotten better. How much better is the question? I think that really will truly come down to how much more can they get out of Daniel Jones this year as compared to last year. Obviously, Daniel Jones didn't really play that much near the end of the season, but the New York Giants added what they needed to add, I feel, to improve Daniel Jones's play. First of all, with a wide receiver 1 in the draft in Malik Nabers, who I truly feel is going to be electric, special, just a playmaker right away for this Giants team. Isaiah McKenzie also adds a nice, veteran addition that is at least like familiar with the system. So he gives them a little bit of depth there. Offensive line, they made some sneaky additions that I like. Jermaine Illuminor has been one of my favorite underrated right tackles in football, playing for the Raiders, the Patriots over the past few years. Has a very high floor to his play, just in case Evan Neal does not work out at that spot once again. They could also move him to the bench or move him to the guard position where he might play better. But Aaron Stinney was a nice little pickup from Tampa Bay, as well as John Runyon from the Green Bay Packers. Both players capable of starting and playing pretty good football. They also added a huge name on defense, Brian Burns, which might have been the most overlooked big name addition to any team this offseason. Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence is going to be a terror for teams. And then you can put Thibodeau as more of your 3rd most important player in your front 7 or your pass rush. And that, I think, serves him a lot better, right? Jordan Phillips also added to the defensive line on the inside, another former Buffalo Bill, as well as at running back, Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy Jr., a guy that I kind of liked, kind of reminded a little bit of Tony Pollard there out of the draft. I believe it was Purdue. Both those guys are potentially going to be adding to the backfield reps for Brian Daboll's offense. Drew Lock is going to be their backup quarterback. I thought Lock showed some improvement last year in Seattle, and as the backup quarterback, he's going to be able to come in there and play a couple games just as he did for the Seahawks if Daniel Jones has issues with injuries, as he had throughout the course of his career in New York so far. And then the secondary, I think they definitely Adoree Jackson leaving is going to hurt, as well as Xavier McKinney leaving is going to hurt. Now, Adoree Jackson's still out there, I believe, so they could still sign him back. But Andrew Phillips, Tyler Nubin in the draft. I like the Tyler Nubin pick especially. I think he's going to come in right away, be a very high IQ safety for them and a playmaker for them, and hopefully replace Xavier McKinney in that department of leadership and a high IQ player. Andrew Phillips could possibly play the nickel position pretty well for this new defensive system under Shane Bowen. And then Jalen Mills kind of was sitting on the bench for New England last year, right? But I think he's a veteran that could play safety, that could play perimeter corner, that maybe could play nickel back. He could do a lot of different things, and a very good high character player as well. I think he'll come into New York and probably play free safety for them, at least some specialized snaps at his later age. But the Giants definitely got better. I think they got better in pretty much all areas outside of running back and the secondary. Otherwise, I think their pass rush is drastically better. Their offensive line has a lot more depth and is better in key positions. And their wide receiver position, which has desperately lacked a number one explosive threat, is better. So this team should be better. I'm not saying they're going to go to the playoffs, but I definitely think they are better than 2023. The Tennessee Titans are the next team that I felt got a lot better in 2024 this offseason. And first of all, you add like key spots and key big names, right? Calvin Ridley at wide receiver is going to open everything up for Will Levis. And this is really where I put Will Levis as the thumbnail or the picture in the thumbnail for this video, because I think that the Titans are the one team that I look at and I place them near the bottom of the league because I don't really truly know what they're going to be on offense. But I could see a world where this offense is really good. Like, I could see Will Levis working out. I mean, he's a big, like, strong kid who's really, like, got an edge to his game. He's got a strong arm. He's pretty athletic. He's tough as nails. I think the team is going to love him. And he's got receivers that can play. Like, he's still got D-Hop. Treylon Burks is more of a number 3 now, developing. And Calvin Ridley is going to be a number 1. And I believe that Calvin Ridley in this offense is going to be much better and better utilized than he was in Jacksonville, where he was simply just the X receiver standing on the outside. That's not really his game. He still went for over 1,000 yards with Trevor Lawrence most of the season, right? So Calvin Ridley, I think, a year removed from being like suspended, is going to be an even more explosive, better receiver. Like, his route running chops are elite. That's why he was signed. L'Jarius Sneed, elite corner, arguably the best corner in football last year. Like, he is going to improve a key position on their team. He is going to make their secondary better by the trickle down effect. Receiver and corner are all about the trickle down effect. And it's truly, it's so much in terms of, do you have a receiver 1? Do you have a corner 1 that can cover the number 1 receiver on the other team, that can separate from the number 1 corner on another team? Like, those are the things that I think really improve teams. And then, do you have a left tackle? Do you have a guy that you can count on the blind side? J.C. Latham was drafted in the first round in the top 10. So they addressed receiver, corner, offensive line. Lloyd Cushenberry, one of the best, if not the best center on the market. They signed him to a nice little contract. He's a top 10 player at that position in football, right? So they made key additions as well as depth additions in key areas. Mason Rudolph added as a backup quarterback. Didn't play bad for Pittsburgh at the end of the year. Tony Pollard is going to be their new running back beyond Derrick Henry. A different look there. But I also like the running back that they drafted last season. Tavondre Sweat is kind of like the new Tart for them. Big nose tackle. Don't love that pick personally. They picked up Sebastian Joseph Day. So maybe they get a little bit more out of their run defense this year, as it wasn't as great last year as previous seasons. They did lose Azeez Al-Shaair, which I wish they would have been able to re-sign him. Obviously, coaching change, scheme change, probably a reason for that. Cedric Gray was a linebacker that I thought was pretty solid, high IQ player. Definitely could start right away for them. Kenneth Murray, former first-round pick at linebacker, could also contribute in an athletic way. And then in the secondary, Chidobe Awuzie, I can't forget about that. Like, they didn't only upgrade about CB1 with L'Jarius Sneed, but CB2 with Chidobe Awuzie, who was the CB1 for a Super Bowl team a couple years ago, right? For the Bengals. So I mean, the secondary is really, really good on paper. And James Williams was a nice pick in the 7th round out of Miami, the safety. So I really like what Tennessee did in terms of improving the receiving core, improving the secondary, improving the offensive line, all areas that desperately needed to be addressed. Now, I worry about aspects of their front 7 on defense. I worry about a new coaching regime. I worry about a young quarterback in year 2. But they've put a lot of pieces around Will Levis to succeed. They've drastically changed the floor of this offensive line. They've drastically enhanced the receiving core and the cornerback group. Like, there's so much that they've done where I could really buy into Tennessee being a sneaky good team this year. So, great job by the Titans improving. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the next team that I really buy into what they've done this offseason. First of all, you can't get worse than their quarterback play in recent seasons. Like, they're not going to get worse than Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph or whatever they had the last couple of years. Like, Russell Wilson, just from what he was last year, I mean, check the stats. He's going to be a better player than what they had in Kenny Pickett. He's a veteran. He's a better leader. Like, the team's going to buy into Russell Wilson. He's a former champion. If Russell Wilson's not working out, they've got an athletic freak coming off the bench that has really more support than he's ever had in his career, with a true number 1 receiver in George Pickens, a nice little tight end, 2 running backs that can run the ball, Arthur Smith, a really solid offensive mind, and then a good offensive line. Like, I think the area I really buy into the Steelers, because obviously they lost Deontay Johnson, and they did draft Roman Wilson, who I like out of Michigan, Van Jefferson they picked up, Quez Watkins they picked up as depth receivers. So they don't have a Deontay Johnson threat at number 2, but there was even some issues with Deontay Johnson in terms of, like, hustle and things that didn't make him a good fit for the Steelers near the end there. But the offensive line, man, like, they already had good guards, and they were running the ball last year near the end of the year. You now add Troy Fautanu out of Washington, who's an absolute stud, can play left tackle, any of the 5 positions, in my opinion. He is going to be a beast in his run blocking because of his mobility and his feet. Zach Frazier, who's a mauler at center, starting right away. Mason McCormick as a backup. That's nasty. Like, they have got depth. They've got, like, great players. Broderick Jones in year 2, he was a first-round pick at tackle. Again, like, they paid their guards. They're veterans there, so they're going to be able to run the ball, this Steelers team, especially with Arthur Smith's scheme. That's going to take a lot of pressure off of Russell Wilson in his play-action attempts and his deep ball, and then also Justin Fields. If Justin Fields is added to this run game, forget about it. They're going to be able to run on everyone, and you just hope that Fields is able to not throw the ball to the other team or get strip sacked, and you should be fine because you've got a great defense, which they also improved on defense. Like, they improved key areas. Like, quarterback, can't get any more key than that. Offensive line, that's arguably the second most important area you want to improve on your team. They improved multiple positions in their starting lineup on the offensive line. They added Dean Lowry to the depth of the D-line. Okay, whatever. But then Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson at linebacker. Like, Peyton Wilson, in my opinion, best tape of any linebacker in the draft. They get him in the 3rd round because of injury issues. He could be a starter for them right away. I wouldn't even deny that. But then you have Patrick Queen, who's a top 20 linebacker at the very least in the NFL, played like a top 15, top 10 guy last year. You know, for the Ravens, they steal him from a rival. Deshaun Elliott played well for Miami at safety last year. They add Dante Jackson's speed at corner, which I think they desperately need, speed at corner. So it's interesting, man. And then Cordell Patterson. Like, don't forget about Cordell Patterson, his potential impact on the kick return department, especially with the new rules. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, this team, I'm buying the Steelers for the first time in a long time. I really feel like since Ben retired, I have not bought into this team because they just have not had the offensive line. They have not had the consistency of an offensive scheme, the way Arthur Smith will draw it up. They have not had any competent quarterback play. And although they have had defense and they've had Mike Tomlin savvy, they have not been able to put everything together. Despite them making the playoffs last year, this was not a good football team. I mean, they lost to the Patriots. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have improved for sure. And it might not really show in the record, but I think it will show in the team. The Washington Commanders have improved. Now, the thing with the Commanders is, I don't know how much this is going to reflect in the record, but they certainly have improved. Jaden Daniels should be a better quarterback than what they had last year. Sam Howell, I don't think was bad last year at all, but he was certainly very inconsistent, right? Like, Sam Howell was bombs away. Sam Howell was big plays, but Sam Howell made a lot of mistakes and he took a ton of sacks. Now, hopefully, Cliff Kingsbury coming in, swapping out for Eric Bieniemy with a clear vision for a mobile quarterback like Jaden Daniels, as well as having a veteran backup like Marcus Mariota to help that guy in that regard. That should be nice, right? This will not be a team that you're really looking at and saying, their record is really going to get a lot better. It's probably not. But, like the level of talent that I think we're going to see from Washington at times, especially on the defense once we get there, is going to be, I think, drastically improved. Now, Jaden Daniels, it's going to be interesting to see. He does look like he's ready for the NFL right away, but we'll see. Like, can this team get a little bit more balance because of his legs and what he offers that running game and how he opens up that running game? Because they did not stay balanced last year. That was a key reason they took so many sacks and had so many turnovers. They did not protect Sam Howell. And on the offensive line, they drafted Brandon Coleman. They signed Nick Allegretti, who started in the Super Bowl for the Kansas City Chiefs. They signed Tyler Biadasz, the center of the Dallas Cowboys. They should have improvement on the offensive line. Wide receiver, they added Luke McCaffrey in the middle of the draft. I think he could start right away as their third receiver. Zacchaeus is a solid veteran addition as a depth option. Austin Eckler will be a reliable third down chain mover in the passing game and screen guy, and maybe even their starting running back. And then at tight end, they added Zach Ertz and Ben Sinnott in free agency and the draft. Sinnott's interesting because he's projected to be kind of a Kyle Juszczyk hybrid H-back player. Defensively, though, I think they drastically improved. My favorite additions, Frankie Louvu and Jeremy Chin from Carolina. I think both players are going to fit what Dan Quinn does extremely well. Frankie Louvu, he can play on the edge or at off-ball linebacker, and he's going to be a destructive piece to their pass rush. Jeremy Chin is a great athlete. I think he could be his next Curse, right? J-Ron Curse from Dallas, where he covers tight ends. Maybe he gets in the box and stops the run. He is basically another linebacker. He is like a Keanu Neal for Dan Quinn. Dorrance Armstrong's going to help their pass rush. They didn't have anyone on the edge last year. When they traded Sweat and they traded Young, they had nobody left. Dante Fowler will also help their pass rush, and Clelin Ferrell will help their run defense. Jerzon Newton was seen as a first-round prospect at D-tackle. He'll help the depth of the D-line. Bobby Wagner will help their leadership in the locker room and then also their productivity against the run at linebacker. And then James Pierre, Michael Davis, and Mike from Michigan, was it? They drafted him. They added Michael Davis. They added James Pierre in free agency. Veteran additions. I think Michael Davis can still play as a number 2 corner in this league. It'll be interesting to see if he fits Dan Quinn's defense well. I think he's more of a cover 3 guy than a cover 1 guy, so he's more of a zone guy than a man guy, but Quinn has kind of expertise in both, so I'll be intrigued to see which coverages he plays more of. Like, Forbes is a zone guy as well, so I'm kind of intrigued. They added a true football player out of Michigan. I know that. A guy that will probably play the nickel spot and be a really good rock in the run game as well as a blitzer. But the Commanders, like I said at the beginning, I don't think their record is really going to improve, but their roster, especially defensively, and then you add in the scheme of Dan Quinn and the fun that Cliff Kingsbury will bring with Jaden Daniels to the offense, and they'll be a much more watchable, enjoyable team with a probably more rock-solid defensive team. So the Commanders, good job. The Detroit Lions are, I feel, in the contender category, and they truly improved their team. I think they're a contender that improved, mostly because of their defense. Now, offensively, they did lose Josh Reynolds, so that's kind of a big loss. Like, he was a key contributor to their offense as a number 2 outside receiver sort of deal, and good rapport with Jared Goff. But the offensive line, they swapped out Jonah Jackson, a younger name, for an older but good name in Kevin Zeitler. Otherwise, the offensive line's largely the same. As long as they can stay healthy, they'll be elite, right? Receiving core, they're expecting more out of Jamison Williams, you would hope, in replacing Josh Reynolds. They also still have Donovan Peoples-Jones on the roster, so don't forget about that. But defensively is really where I want to focus. Defensive line and corner, they've done a lot of work. So they added DJ Reader, which I think is going to make their already good run defense extremely good. Now, the thing about that is, I think that they were good against the run a lot of the time because they wanted to be good against the run. And what I mean by that is they put a lot of bodies against the run to stop the run, to ensure that they stop the run. And I think with adding DJ Reader, it makes them bigger up front. It makes them able to put less bodies in the run game to help them stop the pass. Marcus Davenport is another guy that could have a huge season here if he can stay healthy. He's talented. He just can't stay on the field, and he could be a nice rotation piece for their pass rush. Do I wish they would have gotten somebody a little bit more reliable than Marcus Davenport to complement Aiden Hutchinson? Yes. But that's the risks you take when you're a contending team. You have to pick and choose who you want to add. DJ Reader was their choice. And then in the secondary, not only did they add Carlton Davis, a corner that has played as a number one corner for a contender for like 5 or 6 years in his NFL career now, was a number one corner for a Super Bowl team, right? But he can like man-on-man take on some of the best receivers in football. And then Terrion Arnold, they draft in the first round, who I think is more suited as a number 2 anyway, or a nickel back, and just got very high IQ. I think going to be good in terms of mirror matchability. As long as he is not facing the fast receivers in football, he's going to be pretty good on the outside and probably even better in the inside. They did lose Cam Sutton, but they improved at the corner position. When you add Amik Robertson, when you get back Emmanuel Mosley, who they re-signed after getting hurt in the offseason, Ennis Rakestraw could be a safety or a corner or a nickel. Just a very good football player all around. He can do a lot of different things for them. And that's going to allow them to move around, I feel, Branch as well. If they don't want to play him at nickel and they want to play him at safety, maybe Rakestraw could play that nickel position. Or, Branch could play the nickel, Rakestraw could play safety. Then you've got underrated guys in the secondary and the safety position that they already had on their team. The Lions defense, I think, is going to be one of the more improved teams or improved units on a team that was a contender. So I really like what the Lions did in terms of just overall improving the biggest area of weakness on their team last year. For a team that made the NFC Championship, they got better. And then the final 2 teams. First, the Carolina Panthers. I understand the Carolina Panthers, they could only get better, right? I don't think they led a game last year. At all. They won both of their games on field goal attempts in the dying seconds. They were that bad, but they improved. There's no doubt about it. And that begins with Dave Canales coming in as the head coach. I think he is a smart offensive-minded guy. He's got a great kind of bravado, a great presence to him. He's very positive. I think he's going to be very good for this organization, for this franchise, for this quarterback, Bryce Young. And he did great work with Baker Mayfield in Tampa last year. Great work for that offense. Going from Byron Leftwich to him was drastic change. And then they improved 2 key areas that they desperately needed to improve. Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette, and David Moore is going to really improve their receiving core. Deontay Johnson could separate. He can run routes. He can get open for Bryce Young. Another guy that he can rely on, right? Against man coverage, that's going to be his guy. Against zone coverage, he's still got Adam Thielen to rely upon, right? And then for yards after catch plays, Xavier Legette. Downfield plays, jump ball plays, Xavier Legette. So you've got now 3 receivers that complement each other in different ways. David Moore also is a solid little veteran addition as some depth. Can replace what DJ Chark kind of was for them last year. Offensive line-wise, they added Nyman from the Packers as a backup tackle. And then Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt got huge contracts at the guard positions. Deservedly so. Robert Hunt's a really good player, and he could play tackle or guard, but obviously he's a very good guard. And Lewis from Seattle, I like him in the run game, especially. You look at their starting 5 on the offensive line, there's no reason it shouldn't be good. Bryce Young has some pressure on him this year, but he's going to be able to hand it off to Jonathan Brooks, and he's going to be able to throw it to some better receivers this year, and he's got a better offensive mind with him, so there should be improvement from that quarterback position from that first overall pick. Defensively, I don't know if they got a lot better. They made some subtle changes. Obviously, they brought in guys like Jadeveon Clowney. They lost Frankie Louvu, which kind of sucked, but if they can kind of remain the health of the back end there, I like the addition of Fuller at the safety position, one of my favorite additions. I thought Josie Jewell was a nice pickup, for that defense, having experience in that scheme. And I also felt like the additions that they made in terms of Wonum and Clowney will make up for losing Brian Burns, at least in the short term, as well as if JC Horn can just stay healthy, that's going to just impact the entire defense overall. So the Panthers certainly got better, especially on offense, on the offensive line and wide receiver. So that will make this team a lot more interesting and fun to watch this year. And the final team that I felt got a lot better and definitely improved was the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles improved, and I think they catapulted themselves from a team that was a disaster late last year and one of the worst teams truly in football. I don't remember watching a team in the playoffs before, like, really in the history of me watching a team that had declined as much throughout the course of a season as Philadelphia. Their coaching was pathetic. Their schemes were vanilla. Every team had answers for what they were doing. No team was thrown off by their creativity on offense or defense. And no defense looked older faster than the Philadelphia Eagles. So what they were able to do this offseason, first of all, by improving offensive and defensive coordinators with Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, that's going to just change this team. Kellen Moore is not my favorite offensive coordinator, but he's a good one. Like, he's not great, but he's a lot better than what they had. He's going to bring balance, hopefully a little bit of more of an under center offense, but he also has a lot of experience even from his playing days with spread concepts. So that's going to fit Jalen Hurts, I feel. The run game is going to be, I think, more diverse. The defense with Vic Fangio is going to be much better coached because it was pathetic last year. I remember this team made Matt Patricia, like, 3 quarters through the year, their defensive coordinator and their go-to guy. Like, that was just a scapegoat, 100%. So Vic Fangio is going to turn that around, you would think, especially with the talent they added in the draft. Offensively, they added Saquon Barkley to the running back position. That's going to make them a lot more explosive, a lot more reliable at running back on all 3 downs in all situations. Will Shipley, they drafted. They added Paris Campbell, Devontae Parker, and Johnny Wilson as depth receivers. It's not like they needed a number 1 or number 2. They just re-signed those guys, restructured those guys, long-term additions with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Hopefully Paris Campbell, Devontae Parker, or Johnny Wilson, one of these 3 guys can be a number 3 for them. Actually, Julio wasn't half bad near the end of the year. But Kenny Pickett's going to give them a solid backup to go to if they really need to. Mekhi Becton, Trevor Keegan, Matt Hennessy on the offensive line, all depth pieces. Liked Trevor Keegan out of the draft. Matt Hennessy has started snaps for Atlanta in his past. Mekhi Becton is a freak of nature, but just can't stay healthy. But he's a nice little backup to maybe develop. And if he is healthy, he could get in there and play and probably play well. Bryce Huff, they got younger on the defensive line, faster, quicker, more explosive. That's going to be interesting to watch. And at linebacker, I don't think they really improved, but there's definitely 1 out of 4 of these guys has to work out, right? Like Jeremiah Trotter out of the draft, Devin White, Oren Burks, and Zach Bond. One of these guys has to work out. You would hope it would be Devin White, but you never know with his inconsistencies. Maybe if you just kind of tighten up what his responsibilities are, you get him motivated on this 1-year deal, you never know. You could get year 2 Devin White, right? The secondary, I think, is the biggest area where they really improved with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Cooper DeJean, and Quinion Mitchell. Quinion Mitchell is my favorite corner in the draft. Cooper DeJean is probably the best safety in the draft. And C.J. Gardner-Johnson was phenomenal for them on defense. I think a lot of people forgot how good he was in Philly in that Super Bowl, almost nearly Super Bowl season in that appearance. So, I mean, this defense, a lot more athletic, a lot faster. That's what you love to see. The defensive line is going to be younger, faster, and the offense, I just think, is going to be better coached, and the defense is going to be better coached. So the Eagles certainly improved in nearly all aspects. They still have a lot of issues in terms of, like, how is this all going to look, and how much, was them declining last year? Like, are these older players still going to continue to regress? How much will these younger players really help, and how good will they be right away? But the Eagles should be the favorite in this division, I think, over Dallas this year. So, yeah, those are the most improved teams in the NFL, the 10 most improved teams in the NFL, the teams that I really wanted to discuss. There are others, But these are the ones that really truly came to mind when it comes to what they lost, what they gained, how they could improve. So thank you guys for watching. Gronk spike the like button. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll be back for another video soon. Peace.